So the title of this video is the ultimate mic lineup for podcast, YouTube, and content creation. But before I get too deep on anything, I have to share a couple thoughts. Number one, there are way better microphones out there than the ones I'll be showcasing here in this video. It's just that they usually come at ridiculous price points. Stuff that you nor I will be spending or affording anytime soon. They're kind of unreachable. I'm talking about $5,000 and $10,000 and $12,000 mics. What I'm about to share here are not necessarily the best that money can buy, but they are pretty darn good for what your money can buy. On that note, I also need to share this. There are way better cost-effective microphones than what I'm about to share with you here. Essentially, there are mics that can do your job perfectly or close to it for a fraction of the cost of what I have spent. Also, I need to translate this. Every different voice has a different microphone that may complement it best, right? No two voices are the same, no two microphones are the same. So to find that perfect match, that perfect pair between voice and microphone to make it sound the best, to make it sound the way you want, it takes some research, it takes some time, it takes some testing, it takes some evaluation. So I would rent or borrow as much as possible to find that perfect combination, something that makes you satisfied. And that brings me to the ultimate purchase of a microphone, where my general theory is this: if you're going to use this a lot, if you have a great idea, you're running with it, and your content is going to be important, take a price structure of what you are going to spend on and maybe take it up one notch. Because I feel like these are great investments. They don't deteriorate in time so long as you take care of them. Your content will thank you for it in the long run, and the future will thank you for spending just a little bit more to get the most out of your dollar. Let's begin with what I'm using here. That's the Neumann TLM 103. It's a cardioid pattern condenser, large diaphragm condenser microphone. You should also know that it's running through my DBX286S processor here over the left shoulder into the Soundcraft mixer and ultimately into my Mac laptop. That is a pretty standard everyday setup for what I'm doing here in the home studio. Let me get to the pros of the TLM 103. Number one, it hears everything. With compression, that's a good thing, because that means you can be soft when you want to, and that means you can be loud when you want to. And you're not going to have to really strain your voice to get a consistent, solid signal out of what this microphone is hearing and interpreting. And on that note, what this microphone hears is everything without a ton of self-noise. Rated at something like 7 dB of self-noise. It is ridiculously quiet. In fact, I've had this microphone on with these headphones on before, and I'll hear something outside that I cannot even hear with my own ears if I take these headphones off and just try and listen to the ambient sound. Essentially, this microphone, I think, can hear better than my own ears. And I've got pretty good hearing. That's incredible. In terms of the sound it produces, very distinct high and low ends, even without the processing. The mids are not muddy, and your voice is really just going to cut through a mix no matter what you apply the track to. This microphone just has a really nice frequency response curve. And again, it complements the voice, at least the male voice, which I've found. Definitely, it's going to cut right through a mix, and your voice is going to sit on top of any background music or other sounds you put behind it. The way I like to refer to this microphone, well, actually, let me begin with this. I refer to my voice as pancakes. This microphone puts butter on said pancakes. So yeah, I think highly of it. And the last pro I have here is build quality. It's very sharp in terms of its appearance as well. It's not just built well, I think it looks sharp. If you're doing content in front of a camera, clearly this is only going to add to your visual production value. Now, as for cons, this is crazy. One of my pros was that it hears everything. One of my cons is also that it hears everything. So to properly use this microphone, you're going to need to have a couple different things. Number one, a boom arm or something similar if it's in a studio situation. You're obviously also going to need to have proper room treatment acoustically. I have that here. Hopefully you can tell that. Number three, you're going to need a pop filter. This microphone is very sensitive to plosives. I'm using a certain 45-degree angle technique to try and eliminate that, but generally speaking, if it's somebody, well, who's not accustomed to a microphone like this, plosives may be a factor in that scenario. And last but not least, the shock mount. Clearly, any vibrations or knocking the microphone around, it's going to hear all of that if you don't have this thing set up for success. The only other con that I could really come up with is that I don't feel like it's tremendously portable. And part of that is just the nature of a condenser mic itself. Durability, kind of a question. I mean, are you throwing this thing in a road case, in, out? Is it getting banged up and beat around on the road? I don't know that you want that to happen to this mic. Again, I'm not saying it's because of the build quality. I think that is fantastic. I'm just saying the nature of a studio-ish type condenser mic, I don't think you want to take this thing too much out of its home environment. So if that's something you're looking to do, maybe this microphone is not the one for you in that scenario. And that just brings me to the optimal use of the Neumann TLM 103. I feel like it's how I use it as a main studio microphone in a controlled environment. I think that's the best case scenario. Also, hopefully being used by somebody with good microphone technique. That's very imperative to this microphone. No matter how much dynamics or compression you have on it, good microphone technique important to be used with this microphone. Again, the other thing of optimal use, I mean, you could use this microphone for 10, 20, 30 plus years. So long as you take care of it, I feel like optimal use of this microphone is long-term in a studio. I've now moved on to the Shure SM7B. I'm sure you recognize this microphone. It is so very popular in podcasting and YouTube and content creation here in 2019, but I'm not even sure if people buy it and utilize it because they like it or because they see everybody else doing it. This is such a trendy microphone. It looks nice and it has a lot of great features. I'll get into the pros and cons. Again, a dynamic microphone with a cardioid pickup pattern. Here's my first pro. Number one, it has the shock mount already built in, so you're not going to need to worry about that extra purchase. It also has the mic foam and a couple different windscreen options to choose from, so that comes with the purchase price. There's also a low cut and a presence boost filter feature built into this microphone. So you're getting a lot of options and choices already in one package. You're not going to need to go out and buy the shock mount or a different pop filter or windscreen for this microphone. All of basically everything you need comes included with the SM7B. Another pro is that it is hard to pop your Ps and hit plosives into this microphone. It really is, and that's partly, well, did it right there, partly because the capsule is so far set back, it's recessed in this microphone. You really have to blow a lot of air through the microphone for it to get to the capsule. It also has pretty good side and rear rejection, and it's not going to hear a ton of the room. This is a pretty acoustically treated room, so if I snap, you're not going to hear a lot of reverberation, but even in some noisy and echoey rooms, this microphone's not going to hear a whole lot outside of a general pretty tight sphere of where you're speaking. Another feature that people talk about, it's very true, this microphone, pretty immune to radio frequencies and phone noises, any device that may be transmitting something. This microphone's not going to hear that. You're not going to have any ill effects from it. And then the last pro, I think for a lot of you creating content in terms of video or something that's visual, this microphone looks nice. This is something you want to put on camera. Black, sleek, sharp looking, goes with everything. So looks nice on a boom arm, a classic microphone design that's widely used. So you can't go wrong in that regard. All right, as for cons, how could I not begin with the most popular thing that you've heard out there about this microphone. It needs more gain than most preamps can deliver cleanly. Right now, I have about 70 dB of gain from the MixPre 6 recorder over here for this Shure SM7B. And the MixPre 6 is clean gain. I'm using a ton of gain just to get this microphone up to proper recording volumes. Number 2 on my con list, if you try and use this mic with another popular channel strip like the DBX286S over my left shoulder here, its preamp is not going to give you enough clean gain so that when you try and add its other features like a gating effect, you're going to hear a lot of gating chatter because the preamp's noisy, and then the gate is opening and closing with that noise in the background. It's just, this microphone is tough. It needs so much gain going in. It's got to be clean. Otherwise, all the effects that you'll add to it will also not be as clean. If I had to be picky about a third con here, it's this wire from the top of the microphone that ultimately ends up to the XLR connection here. I feel fine that this would be in a studio situation, and if you weren't touching it and if you weren't moving the microphone a ton, this would never be a factor for you. But if you're taking this into and out of a bag and bringing it with you on the road, I just feel like this is waiting to get caught on something or frayed, or it seems like in a next version of this microphone, which has not come around for a while and may not come around for many more years, in a next version of this microphone, maybe they could somehow hide this cable or conceal it so that it's not exposed to potential dangers. And then the last con about this microphone, it is not a terrific one because it doesn't hear as well, right? It needs so much gain. It's not as sensitive as obviously a condenser mic. And so if you use this microphone with somebody who kind of tails off their speech at the end, you're not going to pick up a lot of that. And I just popped it. You're not going to pick up a lot of that at the end when they kind of tail off like this. It doesn't capture everything. You know, that's the nature of a dynamic microphone to a certain extent. But this one especially, I mean, if you get out of that pattern, I mean, you're really going to notice that the sound is going to be dramatically different at a lower volume or outside the pickup pattern area. So my optimal use for the Shure SM7B, again, a studio situation, I think, where louder conversations take place. And that's usually fine for 2 or 3 guests of a podcast. You're talking in at least normal volumes to maybe higher volumes. I really feel like that would be the optimal use for this because it does handle loud voices just fine, maybe even better than a condenser microphone. Another place I see this mic optimally being used is in long-form narration, like an audiobook. As I talked about the TLM 103 before, that microphone just pops. It's got a great high-end presence, and it cuts through a mix, but maybe you don't want that in a long-form situation for, hypothetically, an audiobook. And again, it does have the low-cut filter on here. I'm not using that. I am using the presence boost switch, but it doesn't necessarily give you all the lows and all the highs. It's got a nice, warm, mid-range sound. So optimal use for me, definitely an audiobook. This would be a good one to record on. All right, let's jump back into the condenser microphone world. This is the Sennheiser MKH 416, a very popular microphone for voiceover work. It is a shotgun condenser, as you can see, so visually looks a little bit different. It also uses a supercardioid pickup pattern. It's pretty tight. You move off axis just a little bit one way or the other, and you can clearly see and hear how it sounds different. Let me jump right into the pros. Number one, this microphone is great for multiple uses. You look it up, by the way, you'll see it being used in a variety of ways for location sound, for voiceover work. It's very popular there. It's good for indoor so long as your room is treated. It's also great for outdoor location sound because, yes, you can close talk it as I'm doing here. You can also pick up sound from 6 to 8 feet away generally if you have it gained properly. So this microphone, super versatile. That's my number one pro. a lot of pros here to get to. Number two, it's also built for the road and packing and travel. And this will fit in a backpack, in a suitcase, needs minimal space. It's not tough to protect in any type of tube. So this thing is built for being taken with you. My third list here, my third item on the list of pros is pretty good self-noise, about 13 dB of self-noise. Not the best, but as it goes, you're going to be able to pick up extremely quiet sounds with high levels of clarity because this microphone doesn't make a lot of noise on itself. It hears pretty well. Another item here on my list of pros, distinct high and low ends. And obviously a lot of that comes with the characteristics of a condenser microphone, but I don't feel like the mids, as I'm speaking here, are muddy. You get a great response from the lows. The highs are very crisp, and just like the Neumann TLM 103, whatever track you lay down here with a voice, it is really going to cut through any mix that you add it into. I also mentioned before this being a super cardioid pickup pattern microphone, it does have tremendous rejection. So if I'm over here, I mean, look at this. You can't hear that very well. It doesn't sound clear, and it's not very audible. So you bring this in a noisy environment, a noisy outdoor environment, and it's going to hear all the auxiliary sounds, but it's not going to come through like the voice, hypothetically, that you're pointing this microphone at. Tremendous rejection. It can record in a bad room and make it sound okay. I'm not saying you can record in a bad room and make it sound great, right? It can record in a bad room and make it sound okay. This mic is also versatile in a sense that it can be placed on a boom arm like this, or it can be placed on the mic stand, which you're currently seeing it on. It can be used handheld without a ton of handling noise. And I also want to say the K-Tech shock mount that I picked up here, not terribly expensive. It's a generic model, but also fits the 416 pretty perfectly. So you can find a lot of different variations out there. The shock mount is not going to cost you an arm and a leg like some other microphones do. And then lastly, one pro that maybe it should have been higher up on the list that I'm putting it here last, but this microphone can either appear in your camera shot if you're doing visuals, or it can be placed out of the frame and you won't even see a microphone present. So it can be there for you, or it can be invisible for you and still get a relatively similar sound based on obviously proper room treatment and proper placement. I only have one con on this microphone. It's that it's not completely silent. What did I say before? 13 dB of self-noise. I mean, optimally, if I could get that down into the single digits, I already love this mic. I would love it even more if it were that quiet. Optimal use of this microphone, I mean, it was my first pro pretty much anywhere. In the field, you can use it in a studio. You could use it for voiceover. You could use it for imaging work. You could use it for a podcast and really get that clean sound indoors or outdoors. You could use it for dialogue, recording a conversation or an interview hung above the subject and the conversation on a boom pole. Pretty much anywhere and everywhere a microphone is necessary. This microphone, the 416, the MKH 416 from Sennheiser, it can find a way to get almost anything done. All right, next up is the Electro-Voice RE320, and I've got to admit, I didn't realize on the stand with this shock mount it was going to be so tall. But this is a dynamic microphone with a cardioid pickup pattern. You notice the black color of the microphone. Don't get it confused with the RE20 or the RE27 ND. Both of those have silver finishes. They're different microphones. As for the RE20, I've used that before in professional applications. Can highly recommend it. I just don't own one, so I don't want to review it here. As for this RE320, let me get to the pros. It is built for the road. unlike a couple other mics I have where there are some reservations about beating them up and in and out of cases and potentially getting dropped, I mean, I can say that this microphone, and by the way, again, you're seeing it on the shock mount here, the microphone itself is built for pretty much anything you can throw at it. It feels robust and looks like it could take a beating. Another nice aspect of this microphone here on my list of pros is its nice sound, which is only enhanced by the setting I'm actually using right now, the kick drum switch setting. There's only one switch on this microphone, and what it does is changes the frequency response curve. It changes the equalization of the microphone. This one in particular, it cuts the low mids with a -4 dB filter centered at around 300 hertz. So it takes it down out of that kind of muddy area, and then it sharpens up the presence. It actually has a presence peak up to about 8 dB when you flip this switch like I have it, a +8 dB gain at about 4 kilohertz. So not necessarily way up in the air frequencies, but you're getting a nice vocal presence from when this switch is engaged. The other way you could leave it would be set at the flat response curve, and that's generally obviously a more flatter frequency response curve, but I like this kick drum setting. I like it switched this way for voice. I feel like it adds just a little bit more dynamics and oomph to the voice before you do any other processing to it. In terms of pros, the price on this microphone, approximately $299. I feel like that in itself is a pro for this microphone because, you know, that price point of about $300, in fact, less than it, can get you this microphone. It can get you in that kind of higher tier, not the ultimate top tier, but in a higher tier of microphone, one that's really going to give you a nice sound in whatever application you're trying to use it for. This microphone, don't be fooled, it does need a significant amount of gain, but my pro here on it is that it doesn't need as much gain as something like the Shure SM7B does. So you will need clean preamps and a nice recorder for this microphone, maybe a cloud lifter or even a FET head if you really want to get the levels up high, but that's not entirely necessary. It helps, but you don't need it like you definitely do need it on the SM7B. And then last but not least, because this microphone is so portable, it can give you that studio sound that a lot of people are looking for in a non-studio environment. You could take this to an office. You can take it to a public place, and with a smaller setup and mount, you're going to get that real dynamic studio sound, so long as the area is acoustically friendly. You're going to get that nice studio sound without having to lug a ton of big microphones or equipment out there. As for cons with this microphone, I only have one, and that's a good thing. It's actually the shock mount. The proper shock mount for this microphone is the one you're seeing right here, the Electro-Voice Model 309A. Would you believe that this costs, I want to say, around $100, more than $100, something in that range? It's not new technology. I've seen this shock mount used for decades now. It's got rubber bands that eventually could go sour and either fail or deteriorate. So again, it's just the shock mount situation for this microphone is not terrific. There are other options, but to do it right, this is definitely the model that you want to have to get the most out of this microphone and for it to hear properly. But again, I can't say that it's my favorite part of it. Visually, it looks okay. It looks like a big broadcast radio microphone if you're going to use it in front of a camera. But the ring that comes attached to that comes with it, that attaches the microphone to a stand, it's a lot more minimal than this, but it gives you zero protection as to any kind of bumps or bangs on a desk or any kind of other vibration that this microphone will likely pick up. Optimal use of this Electro-Voice RE320. I think it's a general combination. You could use it on a boom arm. You could use it on a mic stand like this. You can use it at your home. You could use it on location. This microphone could be used in so many different ways. It's very much like a Swiss Army knife.